And I did share the link with you in case you want it. Let's see, are we live yet? Almost. Oh, that's what I meant to do. Oh, there we are live. Hi, everybody. Jeanne Casteen here, your Democratic candidate for Maricopa County School Superintendent. And today I am talking with somebody who I actually used to work with. Elora Diaz, Dr. Elora Diaz is the now president of the Phoenix Elementary School District Governing Board. We worked together back in 2015. I was doing a research fellowship learning about opportunity youth between the ages of 16 to 24 who are otherwise disconnected from meaningful opportunities in their lives. And Elora is probably one of the hardest working people that I've ever met. She ran for her school board in 2018. And very, very recently, she was promoted, I guess, to president of the Phoenix L School Board. And she's just kind of an all-around badass. And I guess candidates can say badass now because I just did. So welcome, Elora. It's so nice to see you. How are you doing? Oops. There we go. If I'm looking down, it's because I'm looking at my phone to monitor the conversation. And I know a lot of people right now are probably listening to the governor talk about reopening or whatever he's going to talk about today. But hi, Elora, how are you?
Good. Yeah. Well, thank you for having me on today. And thank you for the introduction. So yeah, today I was officially voted in as the Phoenix Elementary Governing Board President, which is a huge honor to serve my community in this leadership capacity. And I guess kind of taking a step back, the entire reason I ran in the first place was to serve this specific community because it reminds me so much of the one in which I grew up. I grew up with a single mom who had me as a teenager and went to public schools. And I definitely, at the time, I didn't realize it, but later on in life, I realized that I experienced a lot of educational inequity. And thankfully, I had some caring adults that helped me to overcome a lot of the barriers and obstacles that I would face. But I know that that's just really uncommon. And I wanted to do my part in making my story more of the norm for students like me. And so that's really what pushed me to run. And then specifically looking at Phoenix L, our district is made up of over 90% students of color. And there was not anyone of color on the board. And I think that representation really does matter. Our students and our staff need to see people that look like them because it can inspire them. It can give them hope for what can be. And again, I don't think that everybody needs to look the same, but I do think it needs to be diverse. And so that was another reason I decided to run.
Well, and you know, I know I have a few friends in Phoenix Elementary. Chico Robinson is one of the hardest working teachers I've ever met, and also somebody who goes to the Capitol all the time. And anytime I talk to any teachers in Phoenix L, they just sing your praises, and they're so glad to have you on that board. So thank you for running. So wait, again, where did you grow up again?
I actually grew up on the south side of Tucson. So I moved up, so I went to the Sunnyside district and graduated from Sunnyside High School, and then moved up to Phoenix for college, and I've stayed ever since.
Okay, right on. So you went to ASU?
Yep.
All right. Yeah. Not that I, the people who are really outrageously loyal to ASU. I'm totally a Sun Devil, but I don't get in that whole U of A. So let's talk a little bit about, like you just said, representation. I had Chanel Poe on yesterday from the Balt School District, and it is so incredibly important to have people of color on our school boards, people who really represent the community. When I used to work in the Maryvale area, Raquel Teran, she just would show up, and the kids had that example of what they could accomplish when they really put their mind to it. And so I know that there are a lot of people who are really, really happy that you're there. as we've seen lately on our school boards. So I have this notification set up on my Google that like school board. So anytime anything comes up, and usually it's things like hiring a new superintendent or, approving a big curriculum purchase. But lately I've seen a lot of school boards are passing BLM resolutions. And then I've seen a lot of articles about school board members who are resigning in shame because of social media posts, really insensitive things that they're putting out there. And so these races of school board are so incredibly important. So tell everybody a little bit, how did you get to the Black Lives Matter resolution? What was the process for you bringing that to the board?
Yeah. Well, I couldn't agree more. I do believe that these local races matter. And when I was running, and thinking about what position I wanted to run for, I intentionally chose school board because I truly believe it has the single greatest impact on schools in the moment. And other offices, of course, the impact trickles down, but it might take a little bit longer. And I wanted to see that direct impact from the work that we're doing. And we're so close to the teachers in the school. So that was important for me. And so what kind of the reason I brought forward my version of the BLM resolution was we were going to vote on a resolution that was developed by our district. And I thought that was great. But when I actually looked at it, given the recent events at the time, it just was not strong enough. And it didn't, I think that's such an important topic. Systemic racism is just so deeply ingrained in our society. And it has been ingrained because people in leadership specifically just have not taken a hard enough stance against it, and too often sit back and watch because it's more comfortable than making a statement and causing a ruckus. And I didn't want my legacy, or I didn't want to look back at this time and say I was just one of those other leaders who just said this is good enough. I wanted to make sure that if our district was going to put something out there that denounced racism and oppressive systems, that we were direct, that we were courageous, that we were bold. And the resolution that was presented to us was not any of that. I actually heard a comment from a community member, and they said that they didn't realize how important it was for people of color to be on the board until I brought forward my version of the resolution. They said that in that moment, they understood that a person of color or a person who's experienced similar circumstances comes with a different lens. And that really prompted my lens of being a Latina woman who grew up in poverty. That really pushed and urged me to create something stronger. And so I brought forward my resolution. I didn't do it in time. I guess there was a process I didn't follow. And because of that, there was a little bit of pushback from some of my board members on process. And I think the community was really upset because in this instance, substance should have been more important than the process. And we had some board members who shared concerns that I think perhaps they should have reflected on that before those concerns were expressed, because the way that they were expressed really solidified the need to bring forward this type of resolution. Because at the end of the day, what happens at the top, what happens with leadership, the tone that you are setting is the tone that will have a ripple effect throughout the district. And we had a lot of back and forth over about 2 weeks. We finally had a work study session. We spent 5 hours working on a resolution everyone could get behind. And I'm proud to say that we came up with a stellar, solid resolution that denounces racism and essentially says, as a district, we are going to work to abolish any systems that create barriers for our Black students and our Black community. And we have some actionable steps in there. Our district leaders will be bringing forward a kind of a timetable, if you will, of how we're going to achieve these steps. A few of the things that we'll be doing is creating an anti-racism policy. We will institute district-wide training on implicit bias. We will have restorative justice conversations. And we are having our equity team really look at like the broader types of trainings that we could also bring into the mix to ensure that our staff has a level foundation of what it means to really serve our students with equity.
Wow, that is fantastic. So before all this, before this resolution was passed, where were you on the journey with restorative practices?
So before I joined the board, the district did establish an equity team. And the equity team is made up of different members from our staff throughout the district. And they have a set of priorities and goals that they're trying to achieve. And the implicit bias training was inserted in there somewhere. I know that that has been an option, but it hasn't been really standardized. I know that they're looking at data to figure out where we might have inequitable practices. For example, I know they're looking at like suspension data, dress code, those types of things. And whenever they come to a finding, they're essentially tasked with bringing forward recommendations for how they will mitigate whatever barriers they're finding. And so my request as of recent events is that we incorporate this equity team into figuring out how to make our resolution actionable.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, we've been working on restorative practices, and it started off with an audit. Actually, it was Eva Perez, who was a board fellow at the time, and she did an audit basically. And we're still not there. This is like 5 years ago, and we still see the number of suspensions in our district where, for Black and Native American kids, it's still 3 to 5 times what it is for other kids in the district. And so now we want to go back again and look and see, okay, well, where are we missing it? So I love the idea of that equity team and putting something like that together. That's a really good step in the process. So I know we talked about it a little bit before, but when it comes to those kinds of trainings with implicit bias, did you all have your staff do the ACEs and trauma informed when McKee's still had that stuff? Do you know?
That is not something that I am particularly informed on. I do know that our different sites have instituted their own types of professional development. I do know that last year we focused a lot on cultural competency practices. I'm almost certain that at a district-wide level, we haven't mandated that yet. And so our hope is with this resolution, we can dig deeper into these different types of trainings, not only for the staff on the ground, but for the leadership and for the board.
Yeah, it's so important. I was talking to somebody in a neighboring district, and when their union put together a statement about Black Lives Matter, they had about a dozen teachers who immediately ended their union membership. And so those teachers are out there, and we really need to not just not be racist. We need to be anti-racist, and we need to help others along that journey. So thank you for the work that you've done in Phoenix L. So let's talk a little bit about how your district is handling COVID right now, because I know that's all of the discussion with the ridiculous announcements. I don't know if you heard, but today the CDC refused to modify their guidelines for the safe return of schools, much to, I'm sure, our president's dismay. But how are you guys in Phoenix L? How are you handling the return for the next school year?
Yeah, so we just had a board meeting where we discussed a lot of this, and it's a tough position to be in because there's no way that we're going to be able to satisfy everybody's needs. But we definitely want to do our best to bring forward a solution that is going to make people feel safe and comfortable and feel that they can trust us. So at this time, we have two different options that we shared with the community. Parents can either choose to send their students to our online school, or they can choose to do a hybrid option. Whatever option they do choose, school starts on August 6th through a distance learning option. And pending whatever Governor Ducey said today in his press conference, we may or may not extend that past August 17th. I am personally in support of extending our distance learning throughout the first trimester. I just think, especially given that Arizona is ranked #1 in the globe for something, which in this case, that's really unfortunate. Given where we're at, I don't think that we should be sending our students and our staffs back to school. I just really don't. And it breaks my heart to think that somebody could get sick or even worse because of that decision. And I am one of 5 board members, so I've expressed my concern and voiced my recommendation. So we'll see what happens. I've asked for an update from our admin on whether or not we can extend our online learning past August 17th. And one thing that I started my comments out with at the board meeting with regard to reopening or not, as a board member of having a 20-month-old son, I am highly uncomfortable with having to go into the boardroom and be in a confined space with so many people. And if I don't want to do that, and if I'm this uncomfortable, I cannot imagine what our educators must be feeling when they're going to have to do this day after day after day, and the anxiety that they must feel. So I want to lead by example. If I'm feeling this way, I want to support them as well. If we are going to have to put them back in schools, and that means I'm going to have to put myself in a situation that makes me uncomfortable as well. So I'm trying to fight for their safety, and we'll see what that looks like.
Well, and you bring up something important too, that I don't know if a lot of people understand quite how school boards work, because if I was running for Congress or another elected office, you're really more of an individual. Whereas when you run for a school board, you are part of a governing entity. And so, for folks who might not understand that, it's, you might have to work to get those other votes. And sometimes the vote might not go the way that you want it to, but it's still the board's decision whether you voted for or against it. And so it's just really important for people to understand that you have to be this kind of unified entity, and that's how progress happens. So like if you don't if the vote doesn't go the way that you want it to, well, then it's time to go back and kind of figure out, okay, what did I miss here? How can I redo this? And it sounds like that was exactly what your board was able to do with the Black Lives Matter resolution as well. So another issue that you guys have struggled with, as have a lot of traditional districts, is low enrollment. Do you know off the top of your head, and I'm sorry to surprise you with this, but do you know off the top of your head just how many charter schools are within the boundaries of Phoenix L?
I don't know the specific amount. We have a report that does detail that. So I'm definitely able to share those numbers with you after the fact. But I do know it's increasing. I think that is just the state of charters in Arizona. And what it's forcing us to do, and something that I've been from day one an advocate on, is how can we leverage best practices to essentially become the best option for our parents, because whether we like it or not, they are going to be in our boundaries. And so traditional schools are going to have to be innovative and on top of their game to compete. And so we need to be having those conversations now. It makes it a little harder with our focus on COVID, but we did have, before COVID happened, there was a discussion where we were going to potentially consolidate some schools. I voted against that, and 2 other board members did as well. So that was stopped. And the next step that we requested was for our district to organize community meetings in each of our schools to figure out how we can essentially serve that specific community, whether it's a signature school or an innovation that they're really looking for. Like, what can we do to attract them? And so those were completed, and more discussion should have happened, but again, COVID came
Yeah.
and I think a lot of conversations on innovation in that regard have been paused a little bit. But once the dust settles with this, I'm definitely going to be pushing for that again. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, and I think too that there could be possibly creative partnerships. I've seen alternatives, like when there are districts that have declining enrollment and they have this space available, I've seen really super creative partnerships where school districts partner with a barber shop and rent out space, and then they have a deal with the owners of the barber shop to provide free haircuts for kids who need them, like in a lot of our communities, the barbershop is kind of the hub of activity, So I thought, what a great idea. There was another organization that I saw, or another school district, I'm sorry, where they partnered with a healthcare organization. So they basically had like a little clinic on the premises. And what else have I seen? Like an adult daycare center. So folks who are struggling with dementia don't necessarily need full-time care, and then they would partner up and read stories to the kids. So it's like, we have to start thinking about those kinds of creative partnerships especially Arizona. It's like the Wild West, right? Like there's no accountability measures. You can just go ahead and open up a charter school whenever, wherever. You don't have to have any kind of study to even see if you need a charter school, but they're just popping up everywhere. And sometimes they don't even open the doors. So it's becoming harder and harder for districts, especially I think in urban areas, to be able to compete. And you said it really well, like, it's almost like a marketing thing where we need to market ourselves better, because as soon as COVID hit, what I saw was, my Facebook feed was just blowing up with advertisements from charter schools, really like, okay, here we go. We're going to just sweep up all these kids, right? But then I would do some research and I found these same charter schools who are spending all this money on advertising on Facebook are directing their students to go get lunch, to get meals at their traditional public schools, because that's the kind of stuff that we take care of. So let's talk a little bit too about that. You've talked about trauma-informed care. I know that you were part of former County Superintendent Dr. Covey's, his Opportunity Youth Task Force. Like, what are you guys going to do when it comes to, our kids when they do come back physically? How are you going to meet the needs, the social emotional needs of your students?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're very fortunate, and this happened before I was a board member, but our board some time ago really prioritized having social workers and psychologists in every single campus. And so we have some campuses that have multiple social workers, and we did that based on the need of the campus. I'm really looking through that equity lens. And so I think that element of our PESD family will really come into play with addressing the needs of our students there. And our social workers are still doing the work virtually. It just looks a little bit different in that regard. Again, going back to our equity team, they have an outline plan of how they are going to be addressing COVID while students are addressing students through this whole pandemic while students are online and once they return. So they've already started thinking through that, mapping out the actionable next steps that they need to take. Definitely can provide that plan too as an example, but really proud of the work that they're doing.
Yeah, you should be. It sounds like they're doing all of the really heavy lifting and all the really important work. So I want to be mindful of everybody's time. Oh wait, there was a question. What are the demographic numbers for the district? Oh, this is Mary Kay. But it looks like Sophia, we've got some board members on here. We've got Mariana Sandoval who's on. We've got Sophia Ramirez is a fantastic candidate here in the Creighton School District, and then Mary Kay from, I think also Agua Fria, I'm pretty sure. 14 schools, 6,400 students, and 80% of their student body is Latino. That's kind of what you said, right? Yeah. Sorry. So let's talk about your adorable son. So what has it been like during quarantine with, well, he started out as what, 16 months and now he's 20 months?
Yeah. Well, I will say, so thank you. I do think my son is incredibly adorable. I might be biased, but he's a cute kid. He is, since he was a little tiny baby, I've used all of my teacher brain and knowledge of like social and emotional learning to really engage him developmentally. So he is used to being on the go, being very active, always being stimulated with a different activity. We would go to the children's museum all the time, the zoo, like you name it. We were like doing it all the time. And so once COVID hit, it was kind of a shock to all of us. And having a toddler in Arizona during the summer in quarantine is like, it's not ideal for the toddler. He was just itching to get out and just missing that social interaction and just being able to play and explore. So that was really tough on him. Thankfully, we have a lot of really awesome family members who just kind of send us resources and help us to engage him. We're in Iowa right now for a few weeks to get away from the heat, and we also have some free babysitting that way, so that's been helpful.
Oh, how nice. I didn't realize. So your husband is from the Midwest then?
Yeah, some small little town in the Midwest.
Yeah, I'm from a small little town in the Midwest. When I was growing up, there were about 4,400 people there. Now there's about 7,000. And
Yeah.
even though it's an hour and a half away from Chicago, it might as well be whole universe is away because it's a very small town. And unfortunately, people tend to, kind of maybe live sheltered lives. But some of us made it out and were able to expand our horizons. And I'm so happy that Arizona ended up being my home.
Yeah.
And I'm so happy too that we had the opportunity to meet. You're definitely somebody that I look up to. Congratulations. I know it's been probably a minute, but congratulations on your doctorate. And congratulations, Madam President. You're doing amazing things in Phoenix Elementary. And I'm just so happy that you were able to hop on today and that we could catch up.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and good luck in your race. And
oh, thanks. That's right. I should say something about that if anybody wants to donate, they can totally do that. Small recurring donations are great. Large recurring donations are great, or just any donation is great. So if there is an appointment in Phoenix L, and I am the one that's making that appointment, we'll make sure it's somebody that really fits into what you guys are working on there. So thank you for coming. I appreciate it.
thank you.
All right. Bye, Laura. Take care.